We are a nonprofit dedicated to supporting initiatives that empower women and girls globally, while also raising awareness of issues affecting them. Through our robust membership program, intergenerational relationships, podcasts highlighting extraordinary women, and through collaboration with impactful organizations, Women of Peace Corps Legacy strives to represent and uplift women whose lives have been impacted positively by Peace Corps. As a founding member of Women of Peace Corps Legacy, I can attest to the value and actually of the fun of being part of this organization. We are very proud tonight to recognize Juliet Sorensen and Anna Perks. After their remarks, there will be time for discussion with your questions. And now, here is Pamela Martin.
So good evening. Welcome. Welcome everyone to Women and Girls Win. We are absolutely delighted to present to you this evening the winners of our 2 awards. One for a promising professional in the earlier phases of her career, and one for an accomplished professional who has already made a significant positive impact on the lives of women and girls. Next slide, please. And by the way, it's no accident that these awards go to women at different points in their professional and life journeys, since this intergenerational aspect is a real hallmark of our organization. Women of Peace Corps Legacy is all about women reaching across cultures and across generations to help and support each other. So as Marianne noted, for our program this evening, each of our 2 award winners will give their remarks on how women and girls win in the world today, followed by your questions, comments, and discussion. As our award winners speak, please go right ahead and jot down in the chat any questions or comments that you have. And after both have spoken, our speakers will address the questions and comments. So also note that I believe our program will end about maybe 8:15, give or take, possibly a little earlier, possibly a little later. So, okay, let us get started. First up is the winner of the Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award. It is my great pleasure to introduce the 2025 winner of this award, Anna Perks. And before I turn the floor over to her, I just want to share with you a few words about her. Anna is an industry pioneer and subject matter expert in the construction and demolition material reuse sector. The founder of her own successful business in a male-dominated field, she has also worked tirelessly for smart recycling practices in her community of Denver, Colorado. She stands as a shining example for women and girls with big ideas. Anna served as an environmental conservation Peace Corps volunteer in Paraguay, 2011 to 2013. So Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Anna Perks, owner and founder of Perks Deconstruction, and I'm based in Denver, Colorado, and I'm excited for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you all tonight. You know, when I reflected on the question, what do women and girls need in order to win or succeed in today's world, I thought about the following 6 qualities. I thought about, first, identifying your own vision and feeling; 2, grit; 3, growth mindset; 4, listening, observing; 5, relationship building; and 6, not being afraid to make mistakes. So I'd like to take some time to share more about these qualities in the context of my own journey. And I hope that by sharing my reflections, those listening can reflect on their own experiences and dreams and values and identify what a win or success means to you. So first, identifying your vision and feeling. So from a young age, I have cared about nature and preserving the environment. I grew up on a small farm town, or in a small farm town of 3,500 people in rural Illinois. My dad owned a cattle and horse ranch, so I grew up getting to work on the ranch and showing cattle. I was also fortunate enough to grow up getting to go to summer camp in Estes Park, Colorado from the age of 9. It was at summer camp that I learned so much about myself in the mountains, and going to camp was truly a life-changing experience for me. I got to sleep in a covered wagon for 4 weeks and be around great friends, connected to the mountains, and I felt grounded. Camp made it crystal clear that nature was important to me, and I've carried that need to protect nature and live intentionally since then. Well, I haven't always been crystal clear in my life vision, and of course, it can always change. I do think it's critical to be clear on what lights you up and to be thoughtful on what you're doing and how you want to feel. Since I was young, my goal has been to leave the world a better place and help protect the environment. So I carry that vision with me as I make career and life decisions. And I think about how I felt at camp and how I can bring that feeling to my current work and life situations. Second, grit. Grit to me is being disciplined, doing hard things consistently, and persistence and commitment to a goal. Grit is important when values are pushed, tested, and you want to live intentionally. It's not always easy. I was a RPCV in Paraguay from 2011 to 2013. And as most people know on this call, it can be isolating and lonely at times as a return Peace Corps or as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I originally started as a Peace Corps volunteer in Guatemala. I had 2 site changes while there, and then I was evacuated and then went to Paraguay and had another site change while in Paraguay. I had a difficult overall Peace Corps experience. I came home with PTSD and a lot of anxiety and depression. I got a therapist, I reached out to friends, and I kept doing the things that I knew that I needed to do to make myself feel better, like exercise and garden and hiking. But it really took a lot of grit to work through everything. I can look back at the Peace Corps now and see good things that came out of it as well, but grit definitely carried me through that experience. Number 3 I have is growth mindset. So after the Peace Corps, I felt a little lost and daunted by finding a job. I worked for a Colorado-based nonprofit helping to build zero waste communities, but I soon felt overworked and underpaid. Then I worked for Boulder County Public Health as a sustainability advisor for 2 years, but I realized I didn't actually like telling businesses what to do and wanted to work and make changes within a business instead. So I worked for an entrepreneur in the manufacturing industry for 2 years for a job that turned out to be really nothing like what it was set out to be. So growth mindset has helped me throughout my career to help me keep learning and trying new things. And I really do love to learn and grow and the challenge that comes with that. Number 4 is listening and observing. I started my business Perks Deconstruction 6.5 years ago after watching a historic home get bulldozed in my neighborhood. I watched everything from appliances to windows and doors go into the landfill and started to research alternatives to demolition. From there, I learned about deconstruction, a building, and learned about deconstruction and kind of how it meant to surgically take apart a building and to salvage and recycle the materials. And I noticed that no one was really focusing on that particular service in the Denver area. So I interviewed deconstruction and reuse companies across the country to understand how they operated and then modeled my business off of one in Portland. Now I have a team of 19 people, and we take that surgical approach to demolition to try to salvage and recycle as much building material as possible. And something that has helped me greatly throughout that business journey is my ability to listen. Listening is a great way to build trust and understand people's self-interests. Listening and observing helps with sales and business, and certainly helped with development work abroad, and the list goes on. Number 5 is relationship building. It all comes down to relationships, whether we're talking about development work while working abroad or building a business. It's important to have a handful of close people in our lives, but also a network. And I've done this through conducting informational interviews or being naturally curious and getting to know people, following up with them. and, you know, grabbing coffee with anybody that will grab coffee with me. In the early stages of my business, I earned 2 grants amounting to a total of around $240,000 to help grow my business. And I have strong relationships in the waste management industry. So when I was starting my business, I knew that there were these grant opportunities out there through the state of Colorado. And because of those relationships I had, I knew a few people on the board of directors who would be reviewing the grants. So I was able to speak to them to understand what they were looking for and what made for a solid grant application. Then after my first grant award, I actually invited those people to my office to see the trucks that they helped fund and to show them the great work that we are doing. Then I was in a good position to submit for a second grant a few years later after showing them how successful the first grant was. So beyond relationship building is making sure we really utilize those relationships. And I think women and girls are at an advantage here because we're encouraged to be more in touch with our emotions. And with more access to our emotions, we're more easily able to ask for help and advice. And I've found more often than not that people are happy to support me and offer guidance when I need it. The last quality is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Many of you may have heard the statistic that women often wait to apply for a job until they're 100% qualified, but men tend to go for roles when they've met only 60% of the job requirements. I hope to encourage women to take chances earlier, act boldly, and not wait for perfection. I make mistakes all the time. Our company is actually expanding right now from Denver into Aspen, and I wrote a contract last winter that was supposed to happen this summer, but the permit got delayed, and we're doing the exterior work starting in a couple weeks in November, right when it's supposed to snow again. And having my team out in below freezing and snowy weather is not super productive, and I didn't account for that. So at the end of this project, I'll take it as a lesson learned and include language in our contracts moving forward that will cover us. So that's all to say, fail fast and make mistakes is okay. And just to wrap up, you know, gender bias is real and it's impactful, but I don't let it slow me down. I think it's important that we take action and keep recognizing women and coming together like this event to build women up. And there's a lot of different ways to think and talk about success. And I encourage people out there to define what it looks like to themselves to be successful. Then once you have that vision of success, write it down and imagine what it feels like and go after that. And with that, I'll end. But again, thank you all so much for your time and for the great honor.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. Thank you for a very useful and proven recipe for success. So we appreciate that. Please note that each of our winners will receive or have received a grant of $1,000 to give to a Peace Corps volunteer project or to a 501c3 that focuses on women and girls. So Anna will be directing her grant of $1,000 to the Lorette Rupee Women and Development Fund. This fund is available to currently serving volunteers and their communities, of course, to help fund local projects related to improving the lives of women and girls. And some examples of that are, you know, establishing a women's co-op, increasing access to resources and services, increasing training, running camps for girls, just a few examples. So thanks, Anna. And please do write down any questions or thoughts you might have in the chat as we move to our next speaker. So let us turn now to the winner of our second award, the Deborah Harding Woman of Achievement Award. I am very delighted to introduce the most impressive 2025 winner of the Deborah Harding Woman of Achievement Award, Juliet Sorensen. And before I give the floor to her, I will say a few words about her. As an international human rights lawyer and law professor, Juliet Sorensen has been a powerful and unwavering advocate for women, girls, and other marginalized communities across the globe. She's an unstoppable force for justice who's made a significant impact on the lives of women and girls. She began her career of service as a Peace Corps volunteer in Morocco, 1995 to 1997, working in maternal and child health. So take it away, Juliet.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Pamela, and I'm absolutely honored to be here this evening. First of all, I want to be clear that can folks hear me? Yes, great. I'm getting the high sign. Thank you. Right. So rather than a slide, I just thought I'd share a picture of me and a dear family that I was very close with during my Peace Corps service. And seeing this picture always sparks joy in me, and maybe it brings back fond memories that you all might have of your time in the Peace Corps. I was actually a maternal and child health volunteer, and so being honored with the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award it truly resonates with me. I've been fortunate to work in the space of advancing issues on behalf of women and girls, and indeed women's rights are humans' rights. So for all of us, since my Peace Corps service, I also is Deborah on the Zoom? She is, right? I thought I saw her here. Okay, somebody's nodding. Yes, it was, and also truly humbling to receive the award from Deborah at the Peace Corps Connect conference in July. Okay, so I thought that I would share the following remarks on reflection of how can women and girls thrive? How can they overcome the continuous challenges? I agree with Anna that gender bias is real. And yet, in over the course of my own career, I find heroes everywhere. Um, and they are heroes who themselves are doing either public work or quiet work on behalf of women and girls. They inspire me. I've encountered them over the course of my career, and I thought I would share stories about these four heroes and how they've intersected with my own work, and perhaps we can draw some lessons from that. Okay. Shortly after I graduated from law school, a colleague and I took on a political asylum case pro bono at the law firm where we worked at the time. And the case was of a young woman who was from Sierra Leone. She had come to the United States, fleeing the civil conflict in her country. She had been separated from her family, from her father and sister. Rebels had targeted her father's house and actually set fire to it and had taken her and her sister. At a certain point, some weeks after the abduction by the rebels themselves were attacked by ECOWAS troops. And my client was separated from her sister and walked to Guinea. On the streets of Conakry, she encountered an old friend of her father's who bribed a steamer captain to bring her to the U.S. as a stowaway in a ship. There is a small Sierra Leonean community in the Boston area that she was indirectly referred to, and a community and legal services organization for migrants that ultimately referred her case to us. I had never personally known, and I came to know very, very well, a woman who had endured such extraordinary personal adversity. She had been separated from her family, never to be reunited with them, as a young woman. She had been assaulted. She came to the US with nothing, and yet she persisted. And when I think of Sophia, she to me gives new meaning to the term, nevertheless, she persisted. And we persisted. We obtained political asylum for Sophia, and I was proud, years later, to quiz her as she studied for her citizenship test. And she now is a citizen with a family of her own living in the New York area. She's a hero to me because of her persistence. And that's my first story. My second story is of a woman named Laya Ngoiba. And Laya Ngoiba is a tireless advocate for women and girls in her town in central Mali, where I worked for several years in partnership with Laya on issues related to decreasing the prevalence of female genital cutting and child marriage. Um, Laya is a liaison to policymakers and lawmakers. She goes on. I'm not sure if there are any RPCBs from Mali here, or if in other countries comparable to Mali, there's a rich radio tradition. But Mali has an oral tradition, and they have a robust non-commercial radio network. So Laya's on rural radio Duenza every week, talking about health and human rights issues as related to girls, why girls should be in school, family planning, why not to enter into a mariage précoce, a child marriage, why families should talk seriously about their girls not undergoing genital cutting. And she is tireless. She herself, like all of us, has personal circumstances. Her husband is deceased. She's a mother. She cares for her own aging mother. And a few years ago, I actually wrote a tribute to Laya Ngoiba on International Women's Day that I'm going to drop in the chat. And if folks are interested, they can look at it at their convenience. But when I left Duenza, the last time I was there, she gave me a beautiful bolt of textiles, and it had an International Women's Day print on it. Um, and I'm going to tell you what it said. Uh, it says in French, economic growth and autonomy of women, inclusive engagement for a secure, stable, and emerging Mali. One of the best presents I've ever received. And I had her beautiful textile made into a skirt, which I wear with pride. So heroes are everywhere. A refugee who came to Boston, a leader of a town in central Mali. And now I'll turn to my third story. So prior to my joining the faculty at Loyola, I was on faculty at Northwestern's Law School, associated with its Center for International Human Rights. And when I was at Northwestern, I founded and directed an interdisciplinary, community-based partnership at the intersection of human rights, global health, and development called the Northwestern Access to Health Project. I could go on about the project, but that's not the focus of the evening. Some years ago, we partnered with a force of nature who is a civil society leader in Somalia named Ilwad Elman. If you have spent time in Somalia or know anything about the country, you are aware of the weak institutions that are there, the long history of civil conflict. Ilwad Elman's father was a prominent peace activist. He had earned a fortune as an entrepreneur in Italy and come back to Somalia and started an NGO focused on being a violence interrupter with youth. And to this day, the phrase "drop the gun, pick up the pen" is a commonly repeated phrase in Mali attributed to Ilwad Elman's father. He himself was assassinated, and Ilwad's mother, her sister, and herself continued his work with his organization, Elman Peace. In 2019, her sister, most unfortunately, was also a victim of the civil violence that has plagued Mali. But Ilwad herself continues. She continues the focus on violence interruption, on youth diversion. Her focus is on climate change, peace, and security. Somalia is, of course, a climate change vulnerable environment, and so traditional livelihoods such as agriculture have been disrupted by that. Are there alternative sources of livelihood for young people in Mali? And how can Elman Peace support them in that? And so I'm also going to share in the chat my third hero. As I said, they are everywhere among us. So the fourth and final hero that I want to share with you that has intersected with my life and work in furtherance of women and girls thriving is a man. And obviously men are stakeholders too. And I'm very proud to spotlight this friend and colleague as my fourth hero. My friend's name is the Reverend Robin Hood, and he is a faith-based community organizer on the west side of Chicago. And I have worked very closely with Reverend Hood on behalf of victims of a predatory mortgage fraud. But his work on behalf of women and girls has taken a particular shape. Chicago has a very high rate of unsolved homicides. That high rate is disproportionately high for women. It is disproportionately high for women of color. And it has been Reverend Hood's mission to raise awareness about missing, because they've not been found and cases have not been closed, missing Black and brown women and girls in Chicago. He is a deft community organizer. He leverages his personal charisma, his capacity as a faith-based leader, his networks among local TV journalists and other reporters. And he has been able to successfully advocate for increased resources to investigate missing women and girls, and also to shine a light on this problem stemming from implicit bias that went unacknowledged for many years. And my final spotlight and story dropping in the chat is about the work of Reverend Hood. So what does this have to do with me? I'm uplifted by these colleagues, partners, clients, and friends over the years. I can only hope that my work makes a ripple of difference alongside theirs. But I learned when I was a Peace Corps volunteer that the whole community is greater than the sum of its parts. And I've been fortunate throughout my career to be a part of a community that is committed to advancing women and girls and to ensuring that they thrive. So thank you so much for this great honor.
Thank you, Juliet. Thank you for these inspiring stories of these wonderful heroes. I think not only is each hero inspiring, but the very idea that that you can find them everywhere is also incredibly inspiring. So thank you. So yes, note that Juliet, like Anna, will be directing her $1,000 grant to the Peace Corps Lorette Rupee Women in Development Fund, supporting community-initiated and volunteer-led projects that empower women and girls. So thank you, thank you. I would like to heartily congratulate and thank both of our winners for inspiring us. But actually, let me thank you for the amazing work that you do, the work that you do in the world, and then for sharing that some of your life story with us. Thank you very much. Now we turn to the question and answer part of our program now. And as we chat, you can continue to write down some questions and thoughts in the chat. We already have some great questions, actually. So if maybe we open it up to the gallery here, yes. And I'd like to start with a more general question for both of you. Just to start off, what made you decide to join the Peace Corps? And did it give you what you thought you were going to get? Either one of you want to pick that up? What made you want to join the Peace Corps? Anna, go ahead.
I saw it as an adventure and wanted to speak Spanish and get to know another culture. And I studied political science, but I focused on international development. And so I was really interested to live abroad and see what that actually meant. So to actually experience it.
And did it give you that? Did it do what you went there to, what you joined for? Or it did something completely different? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I went in with a healthy amount of skepticism about development work and really like, okay, especially I worked a lot on agroforestry projects. So a woman coming into a community trying to, like basically information share. And so I don't think like that's not the biggest impact, right? It's the smaller things of the relationship I had with the school professor that I worked with and the kids at the school that I got to know and like all the smaller interactions that really make up the bigger impact and make up the experience. So no, it was hard to imagine what the Peace Corps would have been going into it. So yeah, I think I got out of it way more than I would have imagined.
Wonderful. Juliet.
Yes, so I was pretty sure that law school was in my future. In college, I had minored in what was called at the time Near Eastern Studies, and I was very interested in spending time in some capacity somewhere in the Arab world before going to law school. I also had studied Arabic in college, and I found it really hard, and it was very clear to me that total immersion was, the only way that I was going to wrap my head around this language. So I was looking at a few different opportunities, um, uh, and ultimately had opportunities to go to Tunisia, to Jerusalem, and then I was asked by my Peace Corps recruiter if I wanted to be a maternal and child health volunteer in Morocco. And that immediately sounded so much more exciting and stimulating and as Anna said, a great adventure. than my other options. So I was all in.
And did you get what you set out to get from it, or you got things completely different?
And so much more, and so much more. That it was the Peace Corps is a very profound experience. I was in a remote area. I was the only American at my site, and for many miles around. I did wrap my head around the Arabic language. I learned things about myself as a person. I matured as a professional. I joined the Peace Corps straight from college. I was, really quite naive and inexperienced. But I also in my village, I learned about community, as I said in my earlier remarks. In some ways, I felt like I had 50 mothers when I was there, which was very reassuring to my own mother.
Lovely. Lovely. Okay. There's a wonderful question here for Anna. And perhaps Juliet wants to comment on this too, but it says, Anna, can you tell us about your employees, the demolition workers and truck drivers? Are they mostly men? Were there challenges to overcome about a woman leading this kind of work? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I have a team of 19 that are mostly general laborers with a few crew foremen and project supervisors. Plus, we have a reclaimed shop where we sell material, and so we have 2 workers there. And all of them are men except for one right now, one woman who works in our as a general laborer. And we've had a couple of women come through and work for us in the last several years. I think 4 or 5 now in total. So it's always my goal to have more. I'm hiring for an estimator right now, and was really hoping to find a woman. And so yeah, it's a challenge trying to get more women into the industry. And I would say challenges to overcome about me leading this type of work. There's, especially at the beginning, like most people were confused and they're like, oh, so your husband started the company, or the kind of microaggressions around, like maybe I had a mask to like against dust and they're like, oh, well, she can't handle it. Like those kind of comments. And I think I've been able to overcome those by just having good relationships with the people that I work with, that I trust. And if it's a client that's being passive aggressive or rude, then I won't work with them again. And I think overall, like in general, it's more positive than negative, and people are excited and impressed and happy to support, and especially people that are choosing to use our services because they're excited about the positive environmental impact and getting tax deductions or something like that.
Great. Juliet, I don't know if you have anything to add about the general concept there, the challenges of a woman leader.
Nope. I'm gonna let Anna own that one completely.
Wonderful. Let me jump to something that is another question here, which is related. A wonderful question about, just a second. It says, I'm always looking for examples of male allyship, if there are any examples. He adds, after all, we are the problem, but examples of male allyship in your journey.
I think for me, it's all around in this industry, in the construction industry. But I've received a ton of help from other construction owners, male owners, who were happy to spend time, share a lot of their time with me, and be generous with information. And like especially one business owner in particular, like went out with me to help present my first estimate to a client. And like just being able to do that with me was really gracious of him. And I have a couple of different business mentors. One is a male who started a construction business in the 90s and made it employee owned. And he, went out to coffee with me several times in my first year and throughout the last several years, but was like reminding me, okay, like first year of business is like freshman year in college. Like, you got to keep kind of going. And I mean, really told me how to do basic things in construction industry for not having starting a business or not having any experience in construction. I had a lot to learn. So that particular person, and I think in general, I've heard this I heard this once at a women leadership conference that stuck with me, is that women are often over mentored but under sponsored. And so as much as we can open doors for one another, and if you're a man looking to be helpful, is like, sometimes I just gave examples of giving information, but it's really like getting a seat at the table and giving opportunities to be there. So that's what I always think about, like, how do I do that for other women as well?
Yeah. Juliet?
Absolutely. I have multiple examples of male allyship in my life. And um, you know, we're all imperfect humans, right? So my an ally in one context may may have some growth areas, I'll put it that way, in another context. But let me just give a couple of examples. And of course, I spoke to Reverend Hood. He was my fourth hero. Um, I spoke earlier about working in Mali on issues related to health and human rights of women and girls. The local doctor was committed to gender sensitive health education around maternal morbidity and mortality in a way that was very sincere and well-intentioned. He was able to speak from experience to women about the health risks of high parity, of female genital cutting, um, of early age at first childbirth, and was committed to health education that was translated in a community sensitive way for individuals, for women who had not necessarily had a lot of formal education. I mentioned that Layan Goiba would go on the rural non-commercial radio weekly. The manager of that radio station, another dedicated ally, he was the NPR of Central Mali, and he was committed to programs in the public interest on a weekly basis. In it, there was also like, it was great. There was smooth jazz night, and then there were local performances and local musical troupes, and ultimately we had a rotating cadre of 6 topics related to global health and human rights of women and girls that he would feature, that he would spotlight every week. So he's another example of an ally.
That's great. Both of you, do you feel actually that your identity as a woman has been an asset or a liability, generally speaking, in pursuing your goals?
I think that's a very deep and complex question. To be honest, I've never thought about it in those terms. I really have not. I personally am happy to identify as a woman. But do I think that it's been a liability or an asset? I've honestly never stopped to consider that. I think I've just tried to keep on going.
That's so interesting. Yeah. What about you, Anna?
Yeah, I think definitely an asset for me in the construction industry. I got certified as a woman business enterprise right away, and certain contracts have to use women businesses, and there's not a lot of them. So that in itself is an asset. But I do think it's different for people to see a woman-owned construction business, and I had people call me through the years to say that, you know, maybe they got goofed over on a project by their last contractor and they really wanted to work with a woman, or they just like inherently had more trust working with me. And so I see a lot of that as an asset.
Yeah. And it helped you stand out, as you said earlier. Yeah, that was a little unique. Yes, we have some other great questions here. Can you think of a particular professional experience that was a challenge for you, and how did you handle it, and what did you learn from it? It sounds like practice for your next job interview.
Yes, I had a particular one of those as a Peace Corps volunteer that I was just reflecting on. And I know that, as I said, I was quite naive when I joined the Peace Corps. I already said that my focus was maternal and child health. My village had an elementary school. It did not at the time have a middle school or a high school. And the elementary school had no plumbing. It was located in the desert away from the oasis, and it had no latrines. I assessed the need, applied for a grant, actually got a grant from USAID to build latrines. The local builder gave me a proposal. Anna would never make this mistake. I looked at it. What do I know about proposals? Looks fine. And said, go for it. And two things happened. The builder did build the latrines, but then someone pointed out to me that there is no running water, so there's no way to keep them clean. There's no way to flush them apart from lugging water, like from the well in buckets to the roof latrines. So the latrines were padlocked. They were not used. They were built and shuttered. Um, and I just felt so crushingly disappointed that I had not foreseen this and reflected on this. The other thing that somebody pointed out to me in the village is that I had been taken for a ride, that the proposal was grossly inflated at prices that nobody would ever pay. And of course, it was because I was not from there, because I was an American. And I was embarrassed. I felt humiliated. At this point, I had lived in the community for a year. My feelings were hurt. And I learned a lot from that experience. And it took me quite a while to be able to talk about it. But I will say I won't ever again be so I won't ever again not look with a skeptical eye, or do some comparison shopping when it comes to vetting a proposal like that. But more importantly, actually, with the latrines, I came to see the glass as half full because eventually running water was piped out to the school. And then they did put faucets and pipes in the latrines, and then they were used and continue to be used to this day, just as there are latrines and running water at the middle school and the high school that now exist in the village where I lived.
Nice, that's great. Wonderful. Anna?
I have, yeah, a couple different ones that are coming to mind, but the one that came to mind first is just something I've had to deal with earlier this year, and it involved an an issue at a job site where we worked on a mall, and a glass wall got taken down that wasn't supposed to be taken down by my team. And my estimator, met with the project manager. Project manager said everything goes. Neither of them actually marked the walls that needed to go. Neither of them looked at the blueprints. And it ended up being a pretty large amount of money to have to reinstall those walls. And my insurance claim was denied. So I learned the hard way that general liability insurance doesn't cover work that you do within the job site. Still trying to wrap my mind around that, but it took about 6-7 months, but to resolve itself. And I learned, was able to avoid mediation, but needed to, relationships are really important, and it was our fault. So, owned up to it right away, communicated throughout the process, didn't feel good. So the way I handled it was had a couple lawyers, did a couple different insurance claims. I brought in my business mentor that I mentioned earlier. I had him come in to talk with the client with me, actually, because it got a little uncomfortable. So asked for help, got resources, and then also looked back at our own processes and said, okay, what didn't happen here? What processes weren't followed? Like, how did this happen? And refined those processes and coached the employee where the issue happened. And tried to give myself a lot of grace, because it was pretty high stress there for several months.
Yeah. Both of these stories circle back to what you were saying, Anna, in your talk about not being afraid to make mistakes, because you can learn a lot from them, as you both have with these challenges. This is a great question from our chat here. Do you think that women dream as big as men? What do you think? Either one.
I don't. I feel like I don't know. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
I'd like to say yes. Maybe depends on the culture and where you're at, but I think definitely in some areas, yeah.
Yeah, maybe the
I
dreams
think
are just different.
there are so many influences on a person, on a girl or a woman. I do want to recommend, for folks who haven't read it, the memoir of Jody Olson, the former Peace Corps director. It's a great book, and it's also a great example of somebody who dreamed beyond what she was told to expect from her own life. Um, so, uh, so I think Jody would tell the person who posed that question, not necessarily.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Jody is sorry she couldn't be with us this evening. She's out of the country, but yeah, thank you. There's one question here for Juliet that we haven't asked. It says, thank you for sharing your stories about the heroes that give you inspiration. Can you tell us about the students you teach and what they express about their interest in international human rights?
Yes, so I teach US students and I also teach international students. My position here at Loyola includes a degree program, two master's programs in rule of law for development. The majority of those students, the enrolled students, are from the Global South, um, and and their perspectives are quite different. Um, and this is in a law school context, so it is through the lens of legal education. I would say that my international students, they're much more aware of the United Nations, of the role of public international organizations and their capacity to do good. They are much more aware of international court mechanisms, like the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, for example, the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, and other institutions that the US has not engaged with. In terms of my US students, I have to say that I think we're at an inflection point because for many years, it always struck me that the right or the privilege that my American students took most for granted was freedom of speech and freedom of expression. It is one of those freedoms that it's sort of in the air you breathe. And you don't, unless you've experienced a counterfactual, um, you don't really know what it's like to live in a society where there's a Ministry of Interior that's actually surveilling the day-to-day lives of individuals who live there. Um, I am seeing a heightened appreciation for free speech and free expression now among my US law students.
Yeah, very sobering, but thank you. Let me ask both of you one last question, which is, what advice can you give to other up-and-coming women leaders? Now, I know that Anna, I know your whole talk was really some very good advice for people, but you might have a last word on that or something to add. And it's said to both of you. Would love to hear your advice to others. Maybe Juliet, start with you.
Sure. Command respect because you deserve it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I
Love
think
it.
two of the things I mentioned in my talk was just using your network. People are there to help and not giving up. Keep pushing on.
Okay, so what was the phrase you said, Juliet?
Command respect.
Command respect, and kind of persistence. Keep going, don't give up. Excellent, excellent advice. Thank you. Thank you both. As we come towards the end of our time here, I want to thank everyone for there's some great questions from the audience, and certainly thanks to Anna and Juliet for their very thoughtful answers and for sharing their wisdom with us and sharing their stories with us. So now let me pass the floor back to Marianne for some closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Pamela. And let me just add my thanks to Juliet and Anna. This has truly been a wonderful evening of hearing your stories. But before we just conclude, let me share a little more exciting development. Women of Peace Corps Legacy has joined with RPCV Nexus for an expanded mentoring program to offer career counseling to returned Peace Corps volunteers and to AmeriCorps alumni. So this is an expansion of our own mentoring program, which has been very successful. I invite all of you to offer to become a mentor, or if you have friends who need to be mentoring or want mentoring, to sign up for that. Let me also mention an upcoming event, Reset and Recalibrate, Connecting with Your Purpose in Uncertain Times. This is a sort of workshop which two of Women of Peace Corps Legacy experts are going to be giving on October 29th. I've looked at what the program is, and I really invite you to let your friends and colleagues know about this. Mark your calendars also for something that is coming up November 19th at the Martin Luther King Library, where you'll be able to see an exhibit entitled Posters, Poetry, and the Spirit of Peace Corps. In addition to seeing all of this, you'll be able to listen to some comments by women who are in the arts, culture, music, and literature. Again, a different area of interest. Now, coming up very soon will be a new release of Extraordinary Women, the podcast series that Women of Peace Corps Legacy has been doing for several years. And guess who our podcast interviewee will be? Juliet Sorensen. So thank you, Juliet, not only for tonight, but for what you will be doing when you have this interview, which will then, of course, be on our entire podcast series available on Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts. I do want to finally invite you, your friends, your colleagues to become active in Women of Peace Corps Legacy. Join a committee, listen to our podcasts, enjoy motivating conversations, and become a mentor. We rely on you for this organization. You are really a part of it. We invite you to become even more active. Your time and your donations make it possible to have these activities. And please visit our website where you can learn more about everything we do and all of these wonderful people who are part of it, including tonight's special guests. Our website is womenofpeacecorpslegacy.com. There's a lot of good information. So with that, let's conclude again, thanking everyone for this extraordinary evening. I think you've inspired us all. Good night.